Dreams, Vices, and Dilemmas. Dear Diary, this episode being out of my world is truly a miracle. The hardest step is done, and harder moments have yet to come, of course. This is nerve-wracking, but I'm here doing it because I said I would do it. So I originally wanted to release the first episode of my podcast in January. Things have, life has taught me and put in front of me two questions of what kind of, person do I want to be in terms of like my work and my art. Do I want to be somebody who trusts their creative instincts and process, where at the beginning things are messy and things are all over the place and whatnot, but trusts their instincts that they'll be able to come to a peace with their message? Or did I want to be the person who pretended to have all the answers and then released shit? I think I'm just kind of realizing that when I truly get out of my way and trust my vision, the things that I create always end up being bigger than me. And I think I'm at a point in this journey, bro, like this long ass fucking journey where there's so much chaos that is self-inflicted, that I just want to kind of follow these bigger than me ideas and visions and creations. I want to follow those instead of just, as soon as an idea gets a little bigger than me, try to stamp it down, like try to beat the shit out of it, because I'm like, I can't have you be bigger than me, bitch. I think I'm realizing that I want to just get out of my way at this point. So here we are. I do have to say, growing up is scary as fuck. It's scary and it's hard. And I don't want to say that because I like to pretend I'm a strong ass bitch. I am a strong bitch, but I am also a scaredy bitch because things are crazy. Hello, hey, this is Musings with Mona, a podcast peeking into the personal journey of a 20-year-old in conversation with my higher self. I'm still working on a tagline for the podcast. Please forgive me for my flip-flopping ways. I'm still trying to figure out a tagline that I feel less squeamish saying. I think the most important things that people need to take away from this podcast is, number one, this is a personal journal. So what you're doing essentially is you're crossing my boundaries, looking into my diary, and forming your own conclusions about me. I have no responsibility in that. So therefore, if you open the book and there's something that you're not really vibing with, like, you're the one who chose to open the personal journal, anyways. The second important thing to know about the purpose of this podcast is that I want to try to practice moving through the world with curiosity and entrusting my intuitive, empirical knowledge. The knowledge that isn't necessarily written anywhere or isn't necessarily documented by anyone, but it's the knowledge of experience and the knowledge of, trusting your awareness and trusting your observations of the way that you see the world, and trusting the fact that you can turn those observations into important pieces of knowledge or data. And number three, last but certainly not least, is like accepting my contradictions and eccentricities. Meaning that I want to create space for me to be able to just be me. This podcast is a little gratuitous. I won't even lie. Like, it's a little bit for me. It's a little bit it's for me, and then you guys get to join in. Like, that's what it is. In the nicest way, it's accepting contradictions, accepting the complexities of being human. But on the other flip side, if you're a little bit more cynical, you need to just know that the tone of this podcast is very moody, very self-gratuitous, and not very consistent. I think just to help you navigate this space, take it or leave it. Take what you need to take and leave what you do not fuck with. At the end of the day, I trust my own vision, and those who see the vision will love me, and those who do not see it will hate me, and that's life, and we move, you know? So because I'm me, I like to think of abstract ideas and try to break down these ideas into easier to digest pieces of motivation and like referral points for when you're trying to live your day-to-day life. If you couldn't tell, I'm an air sign. That's how I do my shit. Instead of actually doing things, I like to think about how I could do things, and then I can feel satisfied knowing that I cracked the code, and so then I never actually do things. And I figured it breaks down to these three things being essentially in conflict with one another. So bear with me right now. I think of dreams as where passion resides. We just need to meet that passion again. So dreams are kind of just the things that motivate you, that get you going. So I think of dreams, and notice that with all of these three like concepts and theories, I'm essentially going to break them down into three. Besides the fact that three is just like a very good balanced number, it's a pretty number too. So of course I'm going to pick it into threes. So I think about dreams in three ways. I think about it in way number one, which is vision. So that's like the big picture. That is like the bigger overall motivating force of why you do the things that you do. Two, service, which is my offering to the world, what you actually are getting yourself involved in. And third way is action, which is what is in my hands right now. I'd say that my vision for life are two things: staying alive, and even staying alive, you could break that down into two ways. Because for me, staying alive is staying lit up, staying passionate, being in love, basically, with the world, with everything macro and micro about life. And then also obviously staying alive as in taking care of your mind, body, and soul. And then the second way that my second vision, like the way, the thing that really is like the big picture for me is the liberation of my people. And of course, I recognize that that's not gonna happen in my lifetime. Like when I think about my most ideal life, I see myself as being alive, being healthy, and still being passionate about life and the world. And then also that my people are free. In the most simplest terms, just be their fucking selves. And no politics are involved. But, like I said, the vision is not necessarily based in facts or anything, but it is the thing that drives you. Service. Service is my offering to the world. Service is the thing that I feel like I can offer to my life, or offer to life in general. And I don't necessarily need any form of recognition or attention or compensation in this kind of work. But of course, once again, these are dreams that we're talking about here, people. So is this always going to be based in reality? No. We live in a capitalist society. People need to get paid. Je comprends. But hear me out. If we lived in a world where people could have their basic needs met, and if I had to dedicate myself to any kind of work, something that is going to be of service to my community, this is what I dream of my service being. My service, I wish, is to support our artists and community organizers bring their visions to life. The end goal, of course, is to just make space for everyone to be themselves, right? But then you have to break it down even more, and then we need to talk about actions. What are the things that I actually have control of in my life right now? I'm a student, I'm a young adult, I am a person with hella responsibilities, essentially. Like, one day I'm gonna have to talk about how being a student is really just like covert ghettoism. For me, right now, it is to create space for myself to create, to make shit, to learn, and to ask, curious questions that I think a lot of people have on their minds, that I have on my mind, but that may also be a little uncomfortable. And maybe not uncomfortable in the way that I'm asking questions that are trying to make people squirm, but I'm asking questions that probably doesn't have a satisfying answer. I don't want to say an easy answer, but a satisfying answer. Also, to add quickly, I think that the act of focusing on the actions I can take every day as a Black woman, queer person, all the labels, everything. Just know basically what I'm saying is, as somebody who's been through it, as somebody who's been the fuck through it, I think part of focusing on caring for myself and my voice and my narrative and my way of seeing the world is, and I don't want to continue this sentence because y'all bitches really ruined this sentence, but is an act of resistance, is an act of, I'd say, resistance. I joke about this podcast being self-centered, self-gratuitous, because I feel like a part of me has to, but it isn't really in a gratuitous way when you think about it. It's kind of more it's a conversation, I would say. Like, it's a creation process too, even, that I'd say, with the universe, with a part of me that also understands at the end of the day that love is really the answer. But you guys are about to be really sick of me. You're gonna be very sick of me. Like, let's just say that you're gonna be very sick of me because I do go off on these tangents sometimes. So quickly, before I move on to vices, I did want to talk about this thing that I thought of in trying to understand why living in 2020 is so fucking weird. Nothing that I'm saying is necessarily groundbreaking or anything. It really is a synthesis of all the information I've taken in from experts and scholars and whatever, but also, once again, from my own experience and, just the way that my own observations of the world, essentially. So I'm going to talk about the paradox of 2022. We'll start at the top. At the top, we're in a state of collapse, right? The world is, that bitch, she's deflating. The balloon is deflating. So essentially, we're in mourning. What we really are as a society is mourning. And so in our mourning, in our way of trying to deal with these difficult things that have been shown up because of the collapse, we are having discourse. We are engaging in conversations and whatever to try to understand things. But there comes a point where discourse becomes an illusion for action, because we understand that the systems we've been living under have not been working. We understand that a lot of the rules that we follow and that we kind of like discipline ourselves in following are a bit arbitrary. We even start thinking about the fact that language is also arbitrary, and let me not get too mindfucky, but essentially there comes a point where, because we start realizing how things that have not been working and that we might have actually been, doing things that make no sense, we kind of get to this point where we hide behind the fact that we don't really know what to do, or that these problems seem a lot bigger than our individual selves. And so we start hiding behind the fact that we're having these conversations. How did I start thinking that this discourse is the illusion of action? The summer of 2020, y'all. Summer of 2020 was a dark time. That will be expanded on another Musings section. But after we are engaging in all of this discourse and whatnot, we get to this point where we start dreaming of new realities, right? A lot of us are being like, you know what, listen, these are these systems that are super bad. That's real, but let's try to think of solutions. What can we do now to like get better and stuff? What can we do as individuals to try to like make our situation a lot better? So we essentially are manifesting, right? I know a lot of the girls don't want to hear me saying manifest, because it's like, ooh, the spirituality bitch has really traumatized us on Instagram. But it's essentially, it is manifesting. Like when you think about the concept of your thoughts and whatnot, like when you keep thinking something, it's finna happen, bro. Like that's not woo-woo talk. That's actual facts. So we're here, we're thinking, and we're, thinking of these realities and dreaming of these realities, but that's all nice and dandy. But in creating something, there's the idea and there's all the thoughts and developments and images that you get from developing that idea, but then there's the actual concrete making that idea into something. There becomes a point where discourse is opening people's hearts and minds to new realities, and it's touching into that part that we were talking about back in dreams of being passionate of something and wanting to take action on that. But we didn't necessarily address all of the structural issues and fallacies that were uncovered during the collapse section, during the mourning section. Puts a barrier essentially between all the things that we're manifesting and that we're thinking of, that we're dreaming of, all these solutions that actually may be very good solutions, but there is this barrier that is preventing these solutions from becoming something. It's essentially, it's complacency, right? Like being complacent. Either people are being very complacent and saying like, well, this is kind of what we have right now, so we can't really like do anything much, or either the people who actually have the facilities to invest time and energy in building these new realities are being silenced and their narratives are being pushed aside and their narratives are being disregarded, right? So then you lead to this point where people are waking up to the fact that there's a dissonance. Something is not working. Something is not really making any sense. And the people who are not really looking to those whose narratives have been erased or anything, because when I talk about these narratives being erased, like, I'm talking about the isms essentially in our society. Like I'm talking about the isms, like the racisms and the race and the racisms and the sex and the sexisms and the, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm talking about, is those narratives that are being erased and demeaned. But then you have this whole group, because they're not seeing that, because they've been taught to not value that, because they've been taught to say that this is not a real solution, this can't even be a part of the discourse because these solutions isn't even real. You get a subsect of the complacency folks who are tired of being complacent. They're like, bro, things are not happening because maybe things are affecting them now. And you have a subsect of them that get up then and start engaging in this very fatalistic discourse and even ways of seeing the world. And that's kind of the third part of this cycle. That's like at the bottom, on opposite of mourning and the collapse. It's this fatalistic nature and thinking that the world is just ending. That's the reason why nothing is making any sense. And it's like, oh, the world's ending for whom though? Like, for me personally, fatalism is the illusion of reason. It's like the natural consequence of like believing that reason means things that we can see, that are tangible only, right? That direct mind to physical connection. But I'm gonna have to also expand on and make a separate musing section about cynicism, hope, and its relationship to survival, because I don't think you can be a truly cynical or fatalistic person if you're somebody who already is oppressed in society, because just the act of you getting up every day and existing is like it's in a way a defiance. But we can talk and expand a bit more on like the different levels of that, but I think it's just slightly different. And I think fatalism is a tendency to those who have always been able to benefit in some way from a world that was structurally built to disadvantage a lot of folks. It's just their tendencies. And then fatalism, I think, leads back to kind of essentially the collapse, because of course, if you just think the world is ending, you're just going to be self-destructive, and it feeds into the kinds of collapse. It's just a self-destruct. Essentially, 2022 is just a self-destructive pattern. Like, that's essentially what it is. Just wanted to talk about that paradox because I feel like when you are somebody who dreams hella big, but yet you live in awareness that this is the reality that you live in, this paradox, right? That you, like, this is the reality that you're existing in, you're going to be somebody who develops a lot of vices. Hey, let's talk about this is where I air myself out. Vices, okay. So, how I understand vices is a variation of values, because our values color our worldview and our experience. Depending on the things that you value and that you cherish and that you use in a way as a guiding force, it's going to color the decisions that you make. Some of us, though, are a bit more stubborn with our beliefs and our morals. Some of us, have egos, hella big egos. I mean, it's not some of us. All of us have egos, but some of us identify so much with our ego that our values can be a way to develop certain vices. And I guess I want to talk about this because I think when you are trying to survive in a world that is very complex and weird and bizarre and absurd, you do end up crutching on to certain things. And especially if you're somebody who maybe had to develop this sense of hyper independence, survival sense since you were quite young, it's something that you constantly have to deal with and face. And I feel like a lot of us have vices that are quite silent because we're also high achieving, high functioning, and whatever the fuck. But here's how I'm going to think about it. I'm going to break it down into my childhood values and vices, my teens, and then right now what I'm trying to work on. So my childhood is going to be an examination of my childhood, my teens, and then now is going to be more like what I'm trying to change and what I'm trying to work on. Keyword is trying. So in my childhood, what I think the values that I learned that I think till this day I kind of hold dearly on is number one, work hard, number two, believe, and number three, know rights from wrong. These three things I think encompass essentially what I grew up being taught. If you just hold on to these three things, then you can just assume that everyone around you also knows as much as you do and knows these values to be true as you do, and you need to just act on that and you'll be good. And when you're a child, you have a very hella big ego because you're just a child. Like, you're born into the world and you're thinking this world is for me. And also a crazy imagination. So you can imagine the kind of child that I was. But as a kid, I've always just wanted essentially to be seen, to be respected, to be given space and care, to be loved. But when you become a teenager, you start seeing the betrayal in people's actions. And you start seeing that, something's not working. And you start seeing the ways in which, obviously, this is your teenage brain thinking about it like this, but how your body is betraying you, your family is betraying you, your friends are betraying you, the school and everything you learned in your education is betraying you, whatever. Like, all of that goes against essentially, because things are happening to you now as a teenager, you're questioning that and you're thinking of that in the sense of betrayal. So as a teenager, for me, what I kind of led my life, the lens I led my life through is I always thought that I had to be excellent, that I had to bluff my way through shit, and that I should give myself no space for expansion. it was very much me versus the world. It was me versus the world. Very still have an inflated ego, because how do you survive if your ego is not big? And a lot of loneliness instead of imagination. It felt like even my mind was betraying me, because it was like, you're dreaming about all these nice things. Like, you have a crush on this guy and you're dreaming about all the ways that like y'all can love each other and whatever. And then the nigga doesn't like you because you're a blackie. I would say that my first vices really like started manifesting as like these self-soothing techniques. Now, now me is dealing with the fact that my vices have expanded to the point where I'm like, is there a point of even having a list anymore? And I think part of that, obviously, I can hyperfixate on the fact that like it's crazy that like I do not sleep, and that's something I need to work on and fix on, and that's true. That's all very real. But I also think that this expansion of my vices, because I'm an optimist and I like to think of things in like a very like positive way too, is obviously your vices are going to expand as you learn to open yourself up more to the world, especially our generation who kind of are growing up in these particular times, not because older generations didn't also have very scary conditions affecting them as well when they were growing up, but I guess I'm just speaking my generation because I only know my generation. I don't know about you Gen X bitches. But imagine trying to open yourself and your ideas and your visions to a world that is just so bleak, bro. It's tough. And so for me, instead of hyperfixating on the fact that like I do not eat very well, I'm trying to practice more awareness of these vices as tools to avoid very uncomfortable conflict and discussions and emotions, at least for myself, and trying to take little steps to unlearning that. I think that that's the best thing that I can do. These are the 3 things that I am actively trying to work on and actively prioritizing what is important in the moment. The second thing is trust, which is not very easy for someone like me. I told you bitches, I got my heart broken multiple times. But trusting people, trusting the course of time, creating a sense where I don't have to hyperfixate and hyper worry about things, because that's not necessarily going to speed up the process of healing or of love. And then the third thing would be creating space. Creating space is honestly like the craziest like the craziest 2 words I've ever heard, because it really has just opened my mind up to the fact that I don't need to like every aspect of myself. I just need to have space for me to be myself. Because if I spend my time, it's back to what I was talking about how I wonder as an artist, do I just go out there and do things and show up authentically, or do I try to perfect something and then show that out? I think it's the same idea with creating space. If you just value yourself for who you are without necessarily having to like it, then you are less inclined to be your own barrier or to be your own op. You feel me? If you if you had to live inside my mind, I think a lot of people would just like, it'd be over. It'd be very over. So when you hold on to that awareness of like, oh, this is what I don't, this is a vice, it's hard then to actually do things to help you navigate your life in spite of these vices. So my goal really is to find comfort and space in paradox, in not needing to have the absolute truth, the very clear truth before taking action. I'm trying to find comfort and space in sensitivity, not being ashamed of my intuitive knowledge, not being ashamed of the knowledge that my emotions give me, not being ashamed of the knowledge that unfortunately isn't really seen as good knowledge or knowledge that is worthwhile. And then also finding comfort and space in open communication, not trying to hold my narrative back, my story back, my voice back for others' comfort, but also because I realized that when you hold yourself back because of fear of what others will say about you, that fear, what it actually is just you projecting people's reactions onto onto like what you're saying, essentially, which at the end of the day isn't fair to the other person and it isn't fair to yourself. So, vices. Now, we have our dreams, we have the things that we feel super excited about, that we want to get up and go on. Then we have this weird paradox, like, wait a minute, it's creating all of these movements and motions in my mind and messing up my dreams. And so I develop these habits because I don't want to compromise on my values. Oh, this is too much. Let's talk about the wrench that messes things up already. Like, let's talk about the thing that messes things up. Because here's the reality. If you wanted to stop, like, if I wanted to stop staying up hella late just because I do not want to go to sleep, or because I'd rather be stimulated hella, I can literally just stop it. Like, I could just not do it. You know what I mean? I could just, like, get up and just go to sleep. If I'm scrolling on my phone, I can literally see myself scrolling on my phone, stop and be like, bitch, what are you doing? And then turn off the phone, flip it down face side, get up and go into bed. I can do that. But there's always a little spiciness, a little something that has to come and ruin it, that twisted it. So this is where I'm going to talk to y'all about the biggest dilemma, the biggest wrench in my perfectly oiled machine, myself. Hello, my name is Mona Monet. I am either your icon or your most sworn enemy. No in-betweens. So listen, nuances matter, but so does perception. So, in an effort to learn not to take things so personally, assume that when I speak in extremes, both binaries are in relation or in communication with one another. Me, I speak, or I try to speak, in definitives. This is for my own sake, y'all. This is really for my own sake, which consequently means it is for y'all's sake. Because if you're somebody who has talked to me before, when I've tried to, explain things, for me, I'm holding space for nuance. I am holding space. I am trying to, address how my observations could have cracks because of this thing and that thing and that thing. But what is the perception of the other person that's talking to me? I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. So, in an effort to try to understand my dilemmas, the chaos of my life, I came up with this thing, of course, as I do. 9 words, 3 archetypes. Boom, let's go. Look, all of my life issues are truly a reflection of the conflicts inside of me. Okay? I've noticed about myself that when I'm feeling a little down and bouts and whatever, a lot of what happens in my real life is just crazy down and bouts. When I'm feeling a little more happier in my life, a little more peppier, things are a little more peppier. Just, that's my observation. That's how I feel like things have been moving for me. And I feel like most of them, when I sit down and I reflect and I ponder on why is this happening to me? Why do I think like this? I've realized that I can fit most of them into these 3 dilemmas, these 3 scenarios, these 3 tropes. Here, What we're talking about here is we're talking about ego, and we're talking about ego in relationship to one another. So here are the that's really hard to say. Here are the 3 tropes. Archetype 1, trope 1 is when my two big egos, my cool ego, the one who's very like, life is life, let's let things happen, everything happens for a reason kind of person. And then the other ego, my more dramatic ego, that is like, woo, life is just a real-time autobiography. Like, this is my movie, flamboyant, bigger than life kind of vibes. In this scenario, these two are being humbled by my love for chaos. Because it would be fine if I just had one ego that was hella like, ooh, whatever. Then the other one that's very like, I care, bitch. That would be fine. Because sometimes you need to be a little laissez-faire and other times you need to be a little larger than life. But God just had to humble me. God just had to humble me. God had to humble me. And God gave me the love, the attraction, I can't keep my hands off of chaos, mess, second opinion, shiny thoughts. I get easily distracted, easily just like searching for like more opinions on things, even though I already had an answer. I just have to go and like spend my time on Wikipedia researching more things and getting trapped in this rabbit hole that then I have to climb all the way back the fuck up to just realize that the big answer was already there. And if I just kept my mind off of shit. Opposite sisters. Second archetype is master performer. So my ego is avoidant, period. Me, I'm avoidant, period. But avoidant in a very different way. One side of me is very much just kind of like bouncy, active stimulation. Let's go. Let's go out and learn things. Let's go and move. That's the way that I like to avoid uncomfortable ass emotions and feelings. And then these other more avoidant personality is the very like, I want to just lounge and ponder and reflect. I just want to be alone. I just want to be sitting down and thinking, and me sitting down and thinking is the only kind of work I want to do in my life. This honestly could invite balance in my life, because I would be on one hand hella bouncy and whatever, and then on the other side I'd go back and just recoup and be alone if I wasn't so obsessed with looking good every time. Like, that's the end of the sentence. Like, if I didn't have a thirst for attention, I feel like it'd be fine. But if there's someone like me, if I'm going to ponder and reflect, I need to look good doing it. And I need you bitches to know that I look good doing it. If I am going to be very active and reading a book and whatever, I need to look good doing it. I need to look like I'm the smartest bitch in the room. Oh, it's so embarrassing. But that's master performer. 3, intellects fight. So in intellect fights, we have both egos are opinionated as fuck. And we have one side of me, I should say. I'm saying both egos. It's one ego, but it's like manifests in 2 different ways. So you have one ego, depending on the situation, that will manifest as a curious bitch. a curry ass bitch. That's funny. Opinionated ego, you have our curious bitch with no shame, who's always going to be asking questions, always going to be asking why, the one that you want to slap the fuck, shut the fuck up. And then we have the ego that can be a bit stubborn. I'll never ask anybody for a second opinion, because my opinion is right. If Why do I have to read a book if I already know? That vibe. And once again, we could have been a very clean, a very fun dual personality if I didn't use my wisdom to prove why I'm different from you bitches. If I didn't feel like I have a crazy, not if I didn't feel like, but if I didn't have a crazy affinity to just be different all the time. So I will flip flop. It's not even like this. I'm the type of person where if we're having a debate on something, if we're having a debate on something, I will either be very stubborn in my ways, or either I will be playing like the devil's advocate. And not because necessarily I want to play devil's advocate or because I care about being hella stubborn in my ways, but because if it means that I could just be different, then I'm gonna do it. This is not something that you need to admit out loud like this, because now all the bitches are gonna be like, wait a minute. Look, very simply, God had to find a way to humble me. So, at my day of birth, I got gifted from the Lord God himself a Gemini moon. The thing about me is I manufacture chaos instead of just sitting the fuck down and journaling my feelings. Like, I could have an easy life where, depending on the situation, I choose either to see things in one way or the other. But instead, I like to cause myself agony. I like to cause myself troubles. I like to cause myself inconveniences just for the sake of it. And who is always the bitch that gets hurt from these situations? Me. Bitch. I am a sadomasochist in real life. Like, yay. But for the sake of my sanity, I have started a podcast where I can place my energy to accept my brilliant, contradictory self. How do I prioritize and value my story? How do I trust my awareness in the way that I see the world? And how do I, once again, create space for me to be my authentic self and to show up? And in spite of whether I like myself or not, I'm still gonna do it because I'm fucking here. This is the body that I have. This is the life that I have. This is the mind that I have. Let's just do it. The fuck? So yeah, that's really what's up. That's the end of Musings.